And guess what? Today we're gonna do something a bit different. Something really cool. We're gonna break down this FTC Coppa situation. Yes, we're gonna go through it in depth. We went ahead and pulled the exact verbatim information from the FTC website. So, we're gonna head into it right now. Stay tuned. It's the whole thing. It's roughly about 7 minutes. I hope you enjoy. You might as well hit the thumbs up and the like and all that good stuff now, because you know what? It's a long video. But this is for you guys. I hope you enjoy.
Under Coppa, how do I know if my channel is directed to children? Since the FTC and New York Attorney General announced their September 2019 settlement with YouTube for violations of the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act rule, we've heard that question from channel owners, sometimes called content creators. If you're a channel owner who shares content on user-generated platforms like YouTube, read on for FTC staff guidance about the applicability of the Coppa rule and how those covered by the rule can comply with its requirements. The FTC action against YouTube and Google. The lawsuit against YouTube and Google alleged that the companies illegally collected personal information from children, in violation of Coppa. According to the complaint, the companies collected that information from viewers of child-directed YouTube channels in the form of persistent identifiers that track users across the internet but didn't notify parents and get their consent. To settle the case, YouTube and Google agreed to create a mechanism so that channel owners can designate when the videos they upload to YouTube are, to use the words of Coppa, directed to children. The purpose of this requirement is to make sure that both YouTube and channel owners are complying with the law. A Coppa recap. That provision of the settlement has raised questions among content creators about how to determine if what they upload to YouTube or other platforms is directed to children. The answer requires a brief summary of some key Coppa provisions. Passed by Congress in 1998, the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act is a federal law that protects the privacy of children under 13. COPPA's foundational principle is one that most people can agree on: parents, not kids, companies, platforms, or content creators, should be in control when it comes to information collected from children online. The FTC enforces the law through the Coppa rule. In general, Coppa requires operators of commercial websites and online services that are directed to children, more about that in a minute, to provide notice and obtain verifiable parental consent before they collect personal information from kids under 13. The Coppa rule defines personal information to include obvious things like a child's first and last name or home address, but that's not all. Under Coppa, personal information also covers what are called persistent identifiers, behind-the-scenes code that recognizes a user over time in across different sites or online services. That could be an IP address or a cookie when it's used to serve targeted ads. Keep in mind that an operator also might be collecting personal information through an open comment field on its site or service that allows a user under 13 to make personal information publicly available. For example, think of a comment like this on a child-directed site: "My name is Mary Jones from Springfield. I love this video." How Coppa applies to channel owners. So how does Coppa apply to channel owners who upload their content to YouTube or another third-party platform? Coppa applies in the same way it would if the channel owner had its own website or app. If a channel owner uploads content to a platform like YouTube, the channel might meet the definition of a website or online service covered by Coppa, depending on the nature of the content and the information collected. If the content is directed to children and if the channel owner, or someone on its behalf, for example, an ad network, collects personal information from viewers of that content, for example, through a persistent identifier that tracks a user to serve interest-based ads, the channel is covered by Coppa. Once Coppa applies, the operator must provide notice, obtain verifiable parental consent, and meet COPPA's other requirements. For information on how to comply with Coppa, please visit the FTC's Coppa page for our 6-step compliance plan for your business. How channel owners can determine if their content is directed to children. Under Coppa, there is no one-size-fits-all answer about what makes a site directed to children, but we can offer some guidance. To be clear, your content isn't considered directed to children just because some children may see it. However, if your intended audience is kids under 13, you're covered by Coppa and have to honor the rule's requirements. The rule sets out additional factors the FTC will consider in determining whether your content is child-directed. The subject matter. Visual content. The use of animated characters or child-oriented activities and incentives. The kind of music or other audio content. The age of models. The presence of child celebrities are celebrities who appeal to children. Language or other characteristics of the site. Whether advertising that promotes or appears on the site is directed to children, and competent and reliable empirical evidence about the age of the audience. The determination of whether content is child-directed will be clearer in some contexts than in others, but we can share some general rules of thumb. First, unless you're affirmatively targeting kids, there are many subject matter categories where you don't have to worry about COPPA. For example, if your videos are about traditionally adult activities like employment, finances, politics, home ownership, home improvement, or travel, you're probable. Why not covered unless your content is geared toward kids? The same would be true for videos aimed at high school or college students. On the other hand, if your content includes traditional children's pastimes or activities, it may be child-directed. For example, the FTC recently determined that an online dress-up game was child-directed. Second, just because your video has bright colors or animated characters doesn't mean you're automatically covered by COPPA. While many animated shows are directed to kids, the FTC recognizes there can be animated programming that appeals to everyone. Third, the complaint in the YouTube case offers some examples of channels the FTC considered to be directed to children. For example, many content creators explicitly stated in the About section of their YouTube channel that their intended audience was children under 13. Other channels made similar statements in communications with YouTube. In addition, many of the channels featured popular animated children's programs or showed kids playing with toys or participating in other child-oriented activities. Some of the channel owners also enabled settings that made their content appear when users searched for the names of popular toys or animated characters. Want to see the FTC's analysis in context? Read pages 10 to 14 of the YouTube complaint. Finally, if you've applied the factors listed in the COPPA rule and still wonder if your content is directed to children, it might help to consider how others view your content and content. See. Milar to yours. Has your channel been reviewed on sites that evaluate content for kids? Is your channel, or channels like yours, mentioned in blogs for parents of young children or in media articles about child-directed content? Have you surveyed your users, or is there other empirical evidence about the age of your audience? What are the possible penalties for violating COPPA? The rule allows for civil penalties of up to $42,530 per violation, but the FTC considers a number of factors in determining the appropriate amount.